Hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Flo and today's video is my October reading wrap up. So the one thing I would say about this month is now that I'm fully in my YouTube journey, I've been doing a lot of reading vlogs, and with that it has actually meant that I have fully expanded my usual reading genre. I am a contemporary romance person through and through, but these reading vlogs have got me into thrillers, fantasy, crime, mystery, even historical fiction. So I have been fully out of my comfort zone and have really been enjoying it. So this reading wrap up is way more diverse, I would say, than my usual standard contemporary romance, because I would never ever touch a book unless it was contemporary romance, new adult romance. I didn't like anything mystical or otherworldly in it, but now I am loving that and I find it pure escapism. And so with that, let's get started into the wrap up. Starting with 19 Steps by Millie Bobby Brown. I actually only recently finished this book. I finished it yesterday, but I wanted to put it first on my reading wrap up because this book has had a lot of media attention lately. So it is a historical romance fiction, way more romance in it than I thought actually. But whilst Millie Bobby Brown's name is on the front, it was ghost written, and so it was written by Kathleen McGirl. And Millie kind of came up with the idea. Whilst there's a huge debate as to whether celebrities should be publishing books with ghostwriters and the problem of ghostwriters, etc., etc., I kind of went into it because of all of that huge debate and a lot of negative media attention this book has had. I went into it with really, really low expectations. I listened to the audiobook of it. I started and finished it in a day. I did speed it up, so obviously it was only about 4 hours long. And some of the criticisms have been the writing, saying that it's very simple and it's not sort of high level literary fiction. But for me, that really works. I actually gave this 4 stars. Yes, the writing was simple. Yes, the plot was easy to follow and understand, but I found it really, really enjoyable. I don't read historical fiction. I only, like I said, read contemporary romance fiction. And so this took me out of my comfort zone, but in a really good way. And it has made me think now, maybe I should start reading a bit more historical fiction. It follows a main character called Nellie, and it goes through the Second World War. And in Bethnal Green, there's a tube station that was used to be in the war used as do they call it a bunker, or it's a bomb shelter. The 19 steps leading to the bomb shelter were very dangerous and dark, and it ended up causing a disaster that happened in real life, and that is that somebody fell at the bottom of the steps, and then it caused all of the people rushing down to safety to fall onto them, and it resulted in 173 deaths. It talks about sort of the politics around that and how the council were to blame or were the government to blame, and sort of the losses and the heartbreak throughout it. There were points where I was crying in this book. I was so emotionally invested in the character, her love interest, her difficulty with falling in love with someone that had to go off to war, and then also her loss as a result of the tragedy of the 19 steps. I found the plot really, really enjoyable, really easy to listen to. If you want just escapism and you want a story that will emotionally hook you, this is one for you, and I highly recommend it. Yes, okay, it's ghostwritten. Yes, okay, the writing is simple and not perfect, but you can still get emotionally invested in these characters. I listened to it in one day and I still felt really invested in such a short amount of time. So I do recommend this, 4 out of 5 stars. And then, as I mentioned, I have been doing a lot of reading vlogs, and so a lot of these books are actually contained in reading vlogs. So I will try not to repeat myself and give you a really brief summary of some of those books that are involved in the vlogs. And one of them is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I gave this 4 stars. The trope involved is friends to lovers, and the main character goes off to a lake house every weekend. Her dad buys it after her mum passes away, and they go every weekend, and she ends up becoming friends with the neighbour, and then they fall in love, and then some time passes and you're kind of trying to figure out why their relationship went wrong and the causes of it. People do criticise Every Summer After by, is it Carly Fortune? Because they say it's basically a copy of this book. I would say this book is a lot better, and I think that that's the general consensus. I wouldn't say it's a full copy. I did find a fair few differences, and so I could read this one in isolation without feeling like the plot was already spoiled for me. So yeah, 4 out of 5 stars, would highly recommend. And then the next book, I've lost the jacket for it, and I've had it for a long time, if you can't tell by the yellowness of the pages, but I finally finished Midnight Sun, which is the final book in the Twilight Saga. This is from Edward Cullen's perspective, if you've not heard about it or already read it, or read it back in the day when you were like 12 and it was online and it had been leaked. So I think I rated this because when it was first released on Amazon, was it a few years ago, I bought it and then I read it, and I think I'd only read up to like this amount or something. And then I found, because I've been doing my TBR challenge where I've been trying to finish all the books on my physical TBR, which I've now done, hallelujah, I actually realised that I still had this one and I hadn't finished it, and I wanted to stick to the rules and not break my book buying ban until I'd finished the TBR. So I listened to the rest of this on audiobook, flew through it. And the thing is obviously it's Edward Cullen's retelling of Twilight from his perspective, but it doesn't tell you anything you don't already know. It's nothing revolutionary. I think maybe 13-year-old me would have loved to hear like Edward's perspective and his voice and his character, but 28-year-old me is like, yeah, it was fine. I already know the plot, enjoyed it, got through it, nothing to write home about. And then I finished the ACOTAR series, so I've only got this book in paperback because I have listened to the final 2 on audiobook. I actually have Amazon delivering the paperbacks today, they just haven't arrived yet. And I feel like I've mentioned my fantasy reading vlog 100 times, so I will not talk about it anymore, but that is coming, where you'll get my full thoughts on the ACOTAR series. But overall, I've rated this series 3 stars. Haven't loved it as much as I was hoping or thought I would. I really wanted to be obsessed with this series, but I found the writing, I think as a new fantasy reader, it was quite hard to get into, and I just didn't think I connected with the characters, and I would just like lose concentration on the plot and then like forget what's going on. And I don't think that had I read it in paperback that would have actually helped, because I've been doing audiobook, because I actually find I pay attention to that a lot, whereas when I was reading this in paperback, I was like reading the words but they weren't going in. So I did a bit of both, and maybe I'll come back to this series again later down the line when I've read way more fantasy and got more into the genre, because I do want to love this book and I want to be as obsessed with it as everyone else, because I am getting FOMO. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars for the whole series. Minus the second book, I put 4 stars. But then after reading some other fantasy books, I still think I would backtrack that to maybe like 3.5 stars. So yeah, there's a whole reading vlog on this, so go check that out next week, I think. And then I read The Problem with Forever, which is also in a reading vlog, so I won't go into it too much, but I gave it 4 stars. It's a YA book, YA romance, but also got a lot of emotion in it. It basically follows Ryder and Mallory. They grew up in the same foster care system. They were in the same foster family when they were younger. It was a pretty dark, abusive family, and so they get pulled out of that, and then she ends up getting adopted. He ends up still being in the foster system, but is fostered by a long-term foster carer, and they end up actually going to the same school again. So she goes back from being homeschooled to going into the school system, and that's where they meet again. He is seeing another girl, but then Mallory and Ryder are still trying to like reconnect as friends, and then to obviously deal with like the jealousy of that with the other girl, and then of course they end up reconnecting and friends to lovery type tropes. I really enjoyed it. It was emotional but fast-paced because it's YA. Plot really easy to read, really easy to follow, and just escapism in a really great way. And then I read Reckless by Elsie Silver, which is the 4th book in the Chestnut Springs series. I loved this book. It's my favourite so far in the Chestnut Springs series. I haven't read the new one yet. It follows Summer's sister, Winter, and so you see Summer in the first book and you sort of get snippets of Winter, like she's the sister that is pretty misunderstood and not well liked. There's a lot of family drama and complications, and it's really nice just to get to know her character and sort of push through all of those negative misconceptions and end up falling in love with her and her journey of growth. There is a pregnancy trope, but I think it was done really well, and I loved the pregnancy trope, and I actually don't think I mind it as much as some people seem to. So yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I won't talk about it too much because again, it's on a reading vlog, so go check that out in I think a couple of weeks. And then Fourth Wing. This was my favourite book of the month. I gave it 5 stars. Just like everybody else, I'm completely obsessed with this book. I fell in love with the main character's story. I fell in love with the dragons. I fell in love with the fantasy world. I just think the plot was amazing. I was gripped the whole way through. I fully understood what was going on. Right amount of pace of world building to plot. I just am so excited for the next book to come out. This features in my much talked about fantasy vlog, which is next week as well. So you'll see my full reactions there. But if you have not already read this book, which I feel like I'm in the minority here, then go read it. I actually can't believe I waited this long to read the book. So if you, like me, were someone that hasn't picked this up, please go and pick it up. It's amazing. And I'm lucky I got the paperback because it's the airport edition. So I think the normal paperback is coming out in March 2024. So if you don't like hardbacks, like I don't like hardbacks, go to the airport and get this version because it's so pretty. And then another book I read but listened to on audiobook was To All the Boys I've Loved Before. I've watched the series on Netflix, the film series on Netflix, I should say. And I sadly loved the movies way more than I liked the book. I found Peter a lot more toxic in the book compared to the movie, and he's also such a self-centered character that I didn't like him, whereas in the movies I do. Like, he is a little bit self-centered, arrogant, all of that in the movie, but you kind of love that about him. So the tropes of this is fake dating, and the main character, Lara Jean, ends up fake dating one of the most popular guys, which is Peter Kavinsky, because she ends up like sending these letters out. If you have not already watched the film or read these books, sorry if you have, but she ends up writing these letters to boys she used to have crushes on, and she keeps them at home. They end up getting sent out and the boys receive them. And so she ends up fake dating one of them because she doesn't want one of the other guys to know that she still currently has a crush on them. It's a whole thing. It's not very realistic at all, but if you want like a light-hearted YA escapism, pick it up. But I think I gave it 3 stars. I loved the movies way more, which I know is not that usual. I just couldn't get past Peter. I really didn't like him. So yeah, 3 stars, not a bad rating. I think I listened to it in a day as well, so super easy listen. And then the next book I read was The Naturals, and it is another YA book. Again, it's on a vlog, so I will briefly go over this. It's about a main character who enters, like, she's 17 and she enters this like FBI program for gifted, naturally gifted individuals who help solve cold cases, and her mum was murdered, and so she's kind of motivated to join the FBI program because of that loss. And really easy, really thin book, big text, very floppy, which I love. Really easy to get into. I've got the second book because I was so enticed by the plot. It kept me gripped even for like YA. So I would 100% recommend picking this up. And again, it kind of took me out of my usual romance genre reading, and I still completely loved it. 4 stars, highly recommend. And then the next book that I listened to on audiobook was a book called Pizza Girl. And I don't know much about it. HarperCollins was sending me this book, and so because I could get it on Scribd on audiobook, I thought I would like listen to it before the paperback arriving. I think it's like 198 pages, so it was very short. Listen to it in a day. And it follows this 18-year-old girl who's pregnant, and she's a pizza delivery driver. She is feeling very unsatisfied with her life. There's a lot of like, I think she doesn't fully love her boyfriend, but her boyfriend he seems like a golden retriever type character because he's excited for the baby's arrival. Her mum is so supportive as well, but she does have a lot of questions. My camera cut off recording halfway through that summary of Pizza Girl, so I will try again. So I think I got to the point where I was explaining like she's got a golden retriever boyfriend. Her mum is really happy for the pregnancy as well. So she's in this really supportive family network, but I don't think she's happy about the pregnancy, and I think she's got a lot of questions about her sexuality and what she wants from life. But what's kind of sad in the book is she doesn't fully explore it, and instead the author shows sort of the impact on her mental health for not exploring that and not being open to sort of her true like self, I guess. So she ends up delivering this pickle pizza to this mum and her son. The main character ends up becoming obsessed and infatuated with the mother, and that's kind of how you learn about her sexuality and identity questions and struggles. It's a super interesting plot. It takes you on so many twists and turns, and the plot twist at the end I did not see coming and I did not expect. And so because it's only 198 pages long, I would highly recommend reading it. I only gave it 3 stars, more because it's not my cup of tea of book, but it was enjoyable nonetheless. I was laughing, I was feeling like emotionally invested, but just generally not my cup of tea, hence the lower score. So that wraps up the books I read in October, and now I thought we'd go through very quickly some of the books that I'd like to get to in November. So this is my TBR. I think I want to get into the more like wintry feels, and I've been really lucky that HarperCollins have been sending me a few books. They gave me the cutest gift recently, which was 2 Christmas books and then some hot chocolate and some marshmallows and some pink chocolates on top. This is being added straight to my winter TBR. I read A Merry Little Meet Cute last year, but I will now be on to A Holly Jolly Ever After. This will be full-blown smutty romance plot. I don't know much about it, but I can't wait to kind of get into it, but in like a wintry Christmas setting. So thanks HarperCollins for sending me this. I did really enjoy the first book, so I will be interested to see. I don't know anything about this one, so I will be interested to kind of escape back into like a spicy holiday rom-com world.
Nice.
And then they also sent me an ARC copy of Upon a Frosted Star, which is a retelling of Swan Lake. So again, when I want to get more, maybe into the end of the month, when I want to get into my Christmassy winter feels, I'm going to read this. So those are the 2 books that I'd like to read to add to sort of some festive mood of mine. And then sticking to my fantasy era, I have these 2 books that I know absolutely nothing about, but Sarah Caroli recommended them, so of course I bought them. And then everybody has been hyping up this series, and I know that, is it the 3rd book has recently come out? So I've got this book and I also bought the sequel of it, so I'm excited to read that. And then with this book, I love that it's indie published. Again, no, absolutely nothing about it. I think it might be Enemies to Lovers. I don't know, I could be completely wrong, but it's not that big and it's fantasy, and Sarah recommended it, so of course I bought it. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. And then sticking on the indie published bandwagon, I'm finally going to finish the Dirty Air series by Lauren Asher. I have loved this series. This book I have been wanting to get my hands on because it's so pretty, and Waterstones stocked it and it was cheaper than it was on Amazon. So I of course bought it, and I'm excited to read it as part of like sticking to my usual romance genre. I've got to still have some romance, even though it's like spooky winter season, fantasy era. I still want to kind of escape with a bit of romance this month as well, which then means I will be on to another romance book, which is My Dark Romeo. I don't think I love dark romance. I'm not sure on it. I have been avoiding Hunting Adeline because I'm not 100% sure, but I saw like a TikTok video of this book on like my For You page and it looked great, so I obviously bought it, and I can't wait to read it and read a bit more romance this month. And then finally, just one of my top books that I'm hoping to get to this month is Killer Instinct, which is the 2nd book after The Naturals, which I read in October. YA, crime, mystery, thrillery type vibe book. I think it's going to be an easy read, and it's floppy like the first one. So yeah, just excited to continue this series. So that wraps up all the books that I read in October, and then some of the top books that I'm hoping to get to in November. I have a ton of reading vlogs coming out, like I said, and I love the fact that YouTube is helping me get out of my romance comfort zone. So I'm excited to read a little bit more thriller and fantasy. And if you have any other book recommendations that you think I should definitely add to my TBR, do let me know. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.